Okay, one more day. One more day until we get game one between the Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers. How you feeling about this one? How you feeling about this year's edition of the Stanley Cup Final? Same as last year? I'll tell you what, the closer it gets, the more excited I am. Now, normally I like 2 new teams every year, right? Normally I do. This year, there's a compelling story for both teams because there's new personnel on both, and both teams are better. And as much as, like, from the Florida point of view, I look at this one and I say, the Florida Panthers in this generation are one of the best teams, period. But if the Florida Panthers come away from this era of hockey with only one Stanley Cup, how are we going to feel about them? Sure, it's 3 Stanley Cup Final appearances in a row, but if they only come away with one, how do we feel about this team? Do we put them in a sort of league that includes a number of other teams, even just in this era, right? Salary cap era, like teams that have won multiple cups. Do we put them in that same category, or do we put them in the Anaheim Ducks, Carolina Hurricanes category because they only won 1 cup? Meanwhile, from the Edmonton Oilers, back-to-back Stanley Cup Finals. If they don't win the Stanley Cup this year, how are we all feeling about Connor McDavid? And where is his position right now? And I don't think anybody wants, if you're a fan of hockey, you want to see your superstars do as good as they can. And you want to see them win more than just individual prizes. And you don't want Connor McDavid to join one of the loneliest clubs in hockey, currently populated by players like Jerome McGinley and Henrik Lundqvist, and for you oldsters, Gilbert Perreault and Marcel Dion. And Joe Thornton, for that matter, too. The greatest players to never win the Stanley Cup. When you start talking about the elite level players, like Connor McDavid, that's a club that he does not want to be in. And he got there last season. Obviously, we all know that. And we saw the reaction after the team lost and he couldn't come out to grab the Conn Smythe trophy. I was having a conversation with someone yesterday who brought up a really, really good point about the Edmonton Oilers. And even though, and again, prognostications are prognostications. You go through who's got the better goaltending, defense, depth, all of it, frontline players. There's one thing that I look at as a sort of intangible in all of this. And that is the Oilers know how much that burned last year and knows how that felt when they lost Game 7 to the Florida Panthers. We have a lot to get to today and plenty on this show. And yes, we're going to get into what sort of set off a firestorm yesterday, all the discussion in my blog about Jason Robertson and the Dallas Stars. More on that in a couple of moments. Really quickly, Daily Outline. Here's what's coming up on the program today. Daily Outline powered by FanDuel. Make every moment more with North America's #1 sportsbook. And that is our friends at FanDuel. Also want to remind you, this segment is a presentation of our good friends at Budweiser. That's coming up in a second. Ed Jovanovski is standing by. Stanley Cup Final preview. We'll talk about the Stars. We'll talk about Jason Robertson. And we'll talk about handshakes. Interesting that this conversation so far in the last round dominated by 2 things: goalie pulls and handshakes. We'll get into handshakes here in a couple of moments. In the meantime, this segment, a presentation of Budweiser. Budweiser is encouraging buds to make time for the playoffs, not excuses. Every goal, every check, every win is better enjoyed with your buds. Phone a bud, text a bud, ping a bud, and call out their excuses for bailing on the playoffs. After all, the playoffs are the most wonderful time of the year. Make them count. When it's springtime, it's go time, and it's time for us to go to someone that I really enjoy talking to, someone that can speak with a lot of authority when it comes to the Florida Panthers and the playoffs and the Stanley Cup Final. He is Florida Panthers analyst Ed Jovanovski. He joins me now on the sheet. Ed, thanks so much for joining me today. How are you? How's lovely Florida?
It's good, but a little soggy last couple days. But
okay,
as before talking to you, I'm pumped. I can't wait till tomorrow.
Yeah.
Just the excitement building up, and just going to be treated to some great hockey.
I think we as just a hockey fan, I just want to, whatever it is, I just want to see this thing go 7. Last year was dynamic and exciting and a roller coaster and emotional and all of those things. But there's a couple of things that I don't know that I've ever talked to you about this specifically. There are 2 people that I want to ask you about, and one stretches all the way back to your junior career. So when you were playing with the Windsor Spitfires, the Detroit Junior Red Wings were coached by a 27 or 28-year-old guy by the name of Paul Maurice. Now, I don't know how much interaction you would have had. I mean, you would have been 17, I think, at that point. But do you remember anything about Paul Maurice coaching in junior hockey?
I don't. I just, I think with Mo, it's just been around forever. And I think I heard something the other day. At 27, he was hired by Hartford. So maybe he was even younger coaching in junior.
Wow.
But, one thing I do remember about him, though, he has the same demeanor, on the bench. Obviously, We've seen blow-ups and probably the players well-deserved at the moment to get a little tongue lashing from their coach. But he's got his arms crossed, kind of sitting there, very poised. And it's kind of what you guys see today with him.
Yeah.
Very well-spoken coach. He's got great one-liners. He's kind of having fun doing it as well. But I think overall, I think when you look at him, very calm. And I think that relates well to his players. He doesn't panic. And I think that's something you either have. I played for Mark Crawford. I mean, it's kind of like, when you kind of look at this, I kind of enjoyed it, to tell you the truth. I mean, It was fun. Kicked in the back and come on, Jovo, let's go. We need you tonight type of thing. But, I think Mo has a good control of his guys and does a great job.
He's one of the most interesting people in the game and articulate and passionate and knowledgeable and a great speaker. Last year in the playoffs, he became must-see TV. Like everyone had to tune in to the Paul Maurice pressers. The other person I want to ask you about is Matthew Tkachuk. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here. I'm going to go out on a little bit of a fishing trip. I believe that it was Keith Tkachuk who you had your first NHL fight with. Is that true?
Regular season, it could be. I missed the first 11 games of my rookie year. I decided to fight Shanny in the last exhibition game, and it wasn't because I punched him in the face. It was I punched him in the helmet and I broke my hand.
Yeah.
So, I remember in Winnipeg. So I fought him and I left my right glove on. And Keith and I have become really, really good friends.
Of course.
Just from his time, down here in Florida. Got in touch with Matthew early on and try to help him out here as much as I can here in Florida. So, we reminisced about that over a beer at the casino one night.
Of course. I mean, how could you not? Like, and the thing about Matthew, and he kind of went, and this is all after Four Nations, obviously. Like Matthew Tkachuk just took off as far as like popularity and where his place is in the game and someone that you build around and market around. Second generation player. We told the story, but the Tkachuk family's story's been told over and over and over again. What's your relationship like with Matthew Tkachuk? I mean, given that you competed hard against his father for so many years, here he is, second generation player in Florida with the Panthers. Like, what are the natures of your conversation with Matthew like?
Well, they're really good. Like I said, I think right when he got traded here, I was in touch with him and just helped him on certain areas. But as far as we play golf together, go for dinners and hang out with him. Obviously the age difference, but in sports, if you've been in hockey, I mean, we're not that far removed kind of from this, generation of players that are coming up. And I get it. Yeah, I played against his dad, so it might seem a little bit older, but he's so mature. That's one thing. You look at Matthew, he's very well-spoken, very thoughtful, articulate, like talking about Maurice. Same thing out of Matthew, thinks the game really well. And it's not only just hockey with him. I think everything, you can have a conversation, just about anything from him. He's well-versed in a lot of different areas. And I think for him, coming from his own mouth, I think having the opportunity when this trade happened, you see the smile on his face. He's so pumped to be here. And I tell you what, Jeff, he's become a Florida sports icon. And, I mean, it's I mean, I turn it on the local radio here and listen to all these guys talk about, and where does Matthew rank of all players? Obviously, Danny Marino, you got Dwayne Wade and this guy, but the opportunity here, what's in front of these guys, and possibility of hoisting another Stanley Cup, not only here in Florida, but we've seen it in USA hockey. Matthew Tkachuk is at another level right now, and well-deserved, but he's still humble pie.
It's got to be. I know it's sort of like a knee jerk, and almost, I don't want to say it's a lazy take because it's legitimate, but there are certain tax advantages to playing in the state of Florida. But that's always existed. Like that's always been there. I always think it's kind of like lazy take. What's that? I sound like biz. No, but here's my point. Like, at the end of the day, you have to put together a team. Like, I know that the Stanley Cup is going through the state of Florida going back to 2020, but at the end of it, you have to put together a team. And I look at what Bill Zito, and still, like, we're still seeing, the fumes of Dale Talon. Every time you look at Alexander Barkov, I think of the 2013 draft and him going second overall. I think to myself, it's not just the tax advantage here. Like, anyone can say that and do that. But, like, when you look at how this team was put together, like, what jumps out at you? Because it seemed to me that the minute that Zito took over and he brought in Patrick Hornquist, that was the message that we want to be tough to play against. We're going to bring in nasty players that are hard and miserable to play against. And almost every move that Zito made after that points to the Patrick Hornquist deal.
Right. I think you're exactly right. I mean, there's a lot been said about, like, Horny's. He's part of the organization now. Yeah. And I think when you have a team that's kind of right there and you have your nucleus of players, why not bring in a cup champion, to show if you need a little bit extra, hey, this is how it's done. This is how I prepare. You hear the stories about Hornquist, the way he prepares in the gym, way he thinks the game. He's always in front of the net, takes a beating, and just goes out there and competes. And I think when you bring that to a group, it's got to rub off, because you've seen a guy that's won cups pay the price. So the sacrifice is there, and you know what it takes. And I think it's rubbed off all these guys. Same like you talked to Barkey, same thing with Yager. I mean, things that these guys pick up, and now you got Lundell, Luosterainen picking Barkov's brain. So I think when you said, Dale Talon had a piece of this, and obviously Bill Zito, I mean, the guy's genius. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you got to take some chances, right?
Of course.
So you give up some draft picks, you get some guys in there. And again, now this year, you feel like you have an opportunity to do so. So what do? The unthinkable. You bring in Brad Marchand and you put him into the lineup, and you complete your lineup.
And he's fit. And listen, Seth Jones, to me, that series against the Toronto Maple Leafs, like, Seth Jones, game in and game out, like the decision making, everything that he did. I went to 3 of the games, and it was like I couldn't get my eyes off of Seth Jones. Now, I have a positional default. I always, I'm watching defensemen more than anything else, as I'm sure you are as well too, Ed. But, like, Jones was incredible. But here's the thing that I really find interesting when you talk about players and the way they play rubbing off on everybody else. I remember Doug McLean telling me this story. I remember I asked Doug, I'm like, man, I remember you matching, 18, 19-year-old Ed Jovanovski up against Eric Lindros and the Philadelphia Flyers. And Doug's like, Ed asked for that. Like, Jovo came and said, I want Lindros. And he said that was, like, infectious all throughout that room during that first Stanley Cup run for the Florida Panthers. What do you remember from that? And what's going through your mind when you say to Doug McLean, I want Lindros?
Well, as a young player, right, you feel your game, and I think your matchup, Big E, to his credit, he wasn't going to beat you with the razzle-dazzle. He'll try to go through you. So I felt like the matchup there, would be a lot better than, say, the conference finals with Mario and Yager, where I kind of struggled a little bit, right? So I think at that moment, it just – listen, I said to Coach, I'd like to have that matchup. I just didn't want to screw it up at that point, because you just want to go out there and play your best. And it's one of those things when you do it, you just have the confidence. And it almost relates a little bit kind of what we saw with Jones and Ekblad and these guys that played, in the playoffs, just confidence, getting better. And I think you put players like that into a structured system, and you can kind of see, what these players can be like. And I think taking nothing away from, Chicago, where Seth was.
Yep.
But, you're just kind of ingrained with that losing, mentality,
Yep.
and it's to get out of that slide. It is what it is. We've all been a part of one of those
Mm-hmm.
teams. And I think coming to this situation, he could just be a piece of the puzzle. He can play Seth Jones, get the puck out, move it up, jump up when you feel you can, and just play your game. And he's excelled at it here.
Let me ask you one question about the Florida Panthers team that you played on in that Stanley Cup run. And it's not going to be about the Rats. It's going to be about the ice. You mentioned Jágr and Lemieux. I remember when I worked with Doug, he told me, it's like we had to slow down Mario. I had to slow down Jágr. So I'd get the Zamboni driver to dump extra water on the ice, so essentially really slow things down and turn into like one. There wasn't ice as much as it was like a slushy out there that you get at 7-Eleven. What do you remember about trying to slow down the Penguins?
Well, I tell you what, they were. Going up and down the lineup. I know they were just a stacked group, and pulling off a game 7, in the igloo was something else. But yeah, that was one of the series I think you look at. We didn't really match up great because you look at the seasons that these guys had, and then but we had a close knit group. We had the grinders, a guy like Brian Skrulin, Mike Huff, Tommy Fitz, Mellenby, Terry Karkner, Svela. These guys that played a simple game that can frustrate the heck out of you. And I think that's kind of moving forward onto kind of what we're going to see as we move forward here with Draisaitl and McDavid. These two are the best on the planet. No one's disputing that. I think how are you going to slow them down? And the Panthers seem to always have some sort of game plan kind of ready to go versus these guys. You're not going to take away all their chances, and they're stars for a reason. They will get their opportunity. But it's kind of a little bit of a similarity in that way, where you try to do your best to take down the beast, and you just got to play face hockey.
I'm glad you mentioned Robert Svela. Like the guy was
Beast.
One of the. Oh, and I remember talking to the Florida Panthers dentist a couple of years ago at All-Star, and he's talking about him getting a slap shot in the face and coming back for the third period, and just like can't get that guy out of. I have so many great memories of watching Robert Svela. I tell you what.
With a guy like that, he was, Slovakia. He'd have his, his family come visit quite often. I don't know. I didn't even know what was going on at the time, but I know there was many incidents that we had to put him in the back of the line in practice. A little bit too much fun the night before. But I tell you what.
Had the Vicks vapor. Did the Vicks vapor rub on the chest so the coach couldn't smell your breath?
They knew exactly what was going on, but they couldn't say anything because he was our best defenseman, and he came to play no matter how hung he was the night before. He came to play, but super guy, just a horse type of player, can play in every situation. 230, 240, solid. He was a great player, great teammate.
I'll tell you what. You know what's interesting about this Panthers team is I look at I still think the best compliment you can pay a hockey player is saying this guy could play in any era. I still think that's like maybe the best compliment you could pay a player. And I look at this Florida Panthers team, and there are so many guys, and it's Barkov. And it's Ekblad, and now it's Seth Jones. And listen, the goaltender could play in any era. That's obvious. There's Brad Marchand. Like, there's so many guys that I look at and I say, this guy could play in an up-tempo era. This guy could play in a dead puck era. This guy could play in the 70s where half the league should be in prison. Like, so many different eras. All these guys on the Panthers could have played in. Like, what do you see when you look at this team? Because I look at a bunch of guys that could have played no matter what the era is, dominated by, Gordy or Wayne or Mario or whomever else.
Right. And it's good that you brought that up, because if you want to play a rough and tumble game, the Panthers can give you that. Yeah. But most times they're initiating that game, because that's when they're the most effective. We talk about forecheck, getting in on the forecheck, good F1. Turning pucks over and creating that offensive chaos where they're really good at. Sometimes you get away from that. You play a little run and gun hockey. Well, you go up and down their lineup, and they have guys that can score on any line. So they put the work in. They much prefer when Coach Maurice came to Florida. One of the things that he talked about was getting your defense side of the game right, because that's what wins championships. Took them a couple years, but they tasted it. Eventually, you win the Stanley Cup, and you can see how letter tight they were, as a group. But you hear it around the league, bunch of dogs. Sure. Right? They'll hunt you down, and they feel like, they kind of put the foot down on your throat. Mm-hmm. That's what they do, and that's what killer instinct is, and that's what this team has. And I tell you what, it's been an unbelievable watch here for years. This group, this core group, especially, that's been here.
It's tough now to keep Sylvain Lefebvre a secret, right? One of the assistant coach who handles the defense. When you look at all the players that have come through, all the players that he's helped make better. I think of, and I don't know how much Brandon Montour is shaving off of his contract and sending it to Sylvain Lefebvre, but he did a great job with him, a great job with everybody. Gustav Forsling, the waiver acquisition, finds himself now he's one of the best defensemen in the NHL. Seth Jones, we just talked about, fits into this blue line hand to glove so perfectly, and Nico Mikkola, look at the teams that he was with before. He's a different guy with the Florida Panthers. Do you have a thought or two on Sylvain Lefebvre through all of this? Because I think everyone in and around the league is really starting to notice here. He's been a coach for a long time.
Yeah, he has been, a cup champion, solid defensive type player, understands the game. And when you look at kind of the turnover, that this group has had, you look at a guy like Nate Schmidt, comes into this situation here. He's a plug and play. Here's our system. This is what we want you to do. You don't have to do too much. Get the puck up. And when you have room to skate. Join the play when you can. No one's limiting these guys' offensive ability. Nico Mikkola, it's amazing what this guy's done. And sometimes I think they got to pull the reins back a little bit on him, because he gets the old happy feet going and really going, but he's been really effective. He covers a lot of ice in the defensive zone. Kulikov rejuvenated his career coming back to Florida.
Totally.
So I mean, the credit a lot of the times goes to Mo, deservedly so. He's kind of say on a lot of things, but I like when Mo kind of deflects over to Jamie and to Sylvain on the credit that these guys do, the hours that these guys put in, and the individual work that they do. Because I can reflect as a player too, and for viewers watching, they might think that there's not a lot of that going on. Lindy Ruff spent probably 10 hours a week of video with me, as a young defenseman. So it does happen. You're seeing a lot of video, and you care about your players, especially younger defensemen, as you want to develop and mold into the player that they can be. But these assistant coaches, all of them, even Tuomo Ruutu and all these guys have done a phenomenal job here working all together.
Man, Tuomo Ruutu was a tough player. I thought he was going to be like the next great. Injuries were an issue. I thought he was going to be like one of the great power forwards in the NHL. Every time I look at Tuomo Ruutu, I'm like, oh, I
played with his brother. He's a real beauty.
Oh yeah. They were not shy. They're not a shy family. Okay, one more question for you. Here we are, like 24 hours before game one. We're all looking forward to it. In your mind, how does this series look? Like, does it look just the same as last season, a chase story as one team goes up 3 bagels? Like, what does this one look like to you? Because again, it feels to me like a 7-gamer, and I can talk myself into either team winning the Stanley Cup here, but what does it look like to you in your mind?
That's a tough one, Jeff. I mean, you got 2 excellent teams, right? You can see the Oilers, especially the last couple months out of the year, just the defensive game really tightened up. Darnell Nurse is playing a lot more defensive-minded and taking care of the puck. You add Klingberg, who called me a couple of years ago asking me about this hip surgery. He's back in the game, and what a surprise he's been for that organization. Been really good, and you hear a lot about the Wallman trade. So you look at defensively, I think this team has figured it out. Their goaltender has been a lot better late. So the matchups are there, right? You look up and down the lineup. You talk a lot about depth. Well, the Oilers are talking about, Draisaitl, McDavid aren't doing it every night. It's nice to see everybody chip in. That's kind of been the forte of the Florida Panthers. Everybody kind of, getting the job done and contributing. I said it was going to be a tight series last series versus Carolina. I'm going to move forward as we move into the Cup final.
Yeah.
I'm going to say this series will be tight. I don't think the series starts until a road team wins.
Yep.
So we'll see how teams protect home ice. But I know the Panthers are believe in themselves just like the Oilers do. And I think we're going to see a heck of a Stanley Cup final.
I think it's going to be a great one. Listen, thanks for parking time with me today, Ed. Always appreciate catching up. Enjoy the series. And, by the way, what's the market like with this? Like I went to a couple of games in the Toronto series, and it was remarkable. Like the minute you get off the plane, you start to see Panthers jerseys everywhere. What's the market doing with this one? Last question, then we'll let you get on with your day.
Well, it's been unbelievable. I mean, it's been obviously the talk of the town. And I think, representing in the Cup final for 3 years in a row. I mean, that says a lot. I mean, It says a lot with the organization, everyone involved into it. I think it's a little bit easier right now selling season tickets for the guys that struggled back in the day when it was the top sell, but deservingly so. The team has worked hard right from the top to bottom, right? It starts from the top, right? You got ownership right down at guys making player decisions, but the market's great, Jeff. I mean, it really is. And it's good to see the Panthers at the top of the totem pole right now in a sports-driven market.
And I just love the way they play. Like, I love that style of hockey is in the NHL. And now you know what's going to happen. Everybody's going to try to play like the Florida Panthers. Right. And if I would have said that to you 15 years ago, like, hey, what can we learn from the Florida Panthers? And now everyone, like, you would have said, like, what are you talking about? Now everybody wants to play. First of all, it's a really fun style to watch. You can't play it 82 games a year, but you sure can do it in the playoffs. You sure can.
Yeah, you got to go with what works, right?
Yeah.
You got to go with what works. And I think the guys believe that now. And it's worked for them. So, why change? But we'll see.
Everything's come together. Listen, enjoy the final. Great catching up with you again, Ed. You be well, and we'll check back soon.
All right, Jeff. Love what you do. I told you that before, man. Keep up the good work.
Beats working for a living. I just want to tell old Windsor Spitfire stories with you, going back to the old barn, but we got to talk about it. We'll do that another time. Thanks, Ed. Really appreciate it, pal.
All right, man. Take care.
There he is. Ed Jovanovski, former NHL defenseman, former Windsor Spitfire OHL defenseman. Man, was he tough. And the thing about Jovonowski is, too, I remember, I was going to university at Guelph at that time, and that's when it would have been Jeff O'Neill and Todd Bertuzzi and these guys with Guelph. And Ed was a rookie on the Windsor Spitfires. And I remember reading in one of the game day programs, and I'm still stunned at this fact to this day. He never started playing hockey till he was 11. Never started. Like, he wasn't like, most people like start skating when they're like, 3 or 4 or 5 or what. He didn't start until he was 11 years old. Became a first overall draft pick. Played over 1,000 games in the NHL and was a feared player when he played and wanted the big assignments. That was Ed Jovanovski. I have all day for that guy. And I have all day for this series. Edmonton Oilers facing off against the Florida Panthers. One more empty calorie day here today, and then we get back to Stanley Cup action. Okay, Zach. We're not going to talk about vasectomies again today, are we?
I don't think so, but we'll see.
Okay, well, we'll see where this one goes. We'll see where this one goes. I got a lot of comments about that, various DMs and tweets about it yesterday. One thing I want to get to. I mentioned before we got to Ed that a couple of things from the last round that really sort of popped for people as far as discussion points. One was the Peter DeBoer goalie poll. And I do have a couple of sort of minor points to make on that one in Peter DeBoer's defense. I want to get there in a second. I had an interesting conversation with a goalie coach yesterday from a different team. But the other thing was handshakes. And Paul Maurice's conversation with Rod Brind'Amour about, this is just for the players, I want to pull out. I don't want to do this. This is just for the guys. It's just for the players, the men that wear the buckets and put on the skates, etc. Do we have the Rod Brind'Amour comment about that. If you can fire this up, saying he understood Paul Maurice's point of view. Rod says that he wasn't expecting it. He said it was for the players, and Rod says, of course it is. These are the ones that are battling out there. Quote, I guess my take on it now, sitting back on it and reflecting, we talk about gracious losing, and I've had some pretty impactful memories and moments in that line as a coach going through it. Even in this playoff run with the Devils, I had 4 or 5 guys that were Hurricanes, and I still think of them like that. So it meant something for me to go through that there and shake their hand. For me, I'm not thinking about a TV moment. I get enough of that every time there's a penalty. That's a great line. So that's not in it for me. Great line by Rod. I think moving forward, I'll probably go back to it just because it's a sign of respect. That's the way I look at it. We're not out there on the ice battling, but we're right there with these guys. Okay. So clearly 2 different points of view. Let me see if I can play Switzerland in this one. So Paul Maurice says he's against it. That's just for the players. That's their special moment. They're the ones out there competing. Okay, I understand that, and I understand that code, and I get it. For Paul, that works. Cool. Rod Brind'Amour says it's a respect thing. He wants to shake their hands, and he brought the New Jersey Devils example. Number of ex-Carolina Hurricane players out there, and he wants to shake their hand as a matter of respect. I understand that too. Here's where I'm at. I thought about this afternoon when I saw Rod Brind'Amour's comments. How about this? Why don't you let the players decide who they want on the ice? No, you don't like that one. How about the players like we want our coaches out there, or we don't want our coaches out there? If it really is for the players, then maybe the players should make the decision. And what if the Florida Panthers, what if Alexander Barkov and Aaron Ekblad and Sergei Bobrovsky said, yeah, Paul, we want you and Jamie and Sylvan out here as part of Handshake Alley. Would that mitigate anything? If it really is for the players, to Paul Maurice's point, then shouldn't they decide who's in Handshake Alley? Or am I being just too obvious about this one? That if it's for the players, then they should decide. And players could decide to have coaches there or not. I submit to the jury.
I think it's a good point, actually, Jeff. I think that the players making a decision is a good point there. Correct me if I'm wrong, in junior hockey, don't the coaches just stay at the bench and shake each other's hands, right? And then the players could... A lot of times I feel like I watch
players
like
skate
OHL
over.
Series ending where they go, and then the players skate over.
I like that.
I don't mind that. Yeah. Like, I think that that's an okay way to go about it. It doesn't make the line excessive. If you do want to shake the hand, you can. If you don't, it doesn't come across as disrespect. Like, you didn't, like, you're not going into the handshake and, like, ooh, doing the little, like, slick back, then not shaking
Unless
the
you're
guy's
Milan
hand or, like,
Lucic and Dale Weiss. Unless you're Lucic and Dale Weiss.
But otherwise, like, you have that
Or Marty
option
Brodeur
there.
and
I
Sean.
don't
Hang
mind
on.
that.
Marty Brodeur and Sean Avery was that. When Marty refused to shake his hand after the New Jersey Rangers series. So there was one of those,
Right.
like, yeah, easy now, buddy.
But that's also like you guys telling the stories of the guys who just skate right off the ice, and Berkey saying he doesn't like it when these guys go in there and hug each other and smile and stuff because you just went to war. You're furious that your season's over. Like, I get all of that. And I kind of at the end of a playoffs or a season or whatever, used to have kind of a similar takeaway where it was like, screw this guy. Like, this guy just ended the season or my opportunity at winning, etc. But I do like the idea of just having the option to go and shake the coach's hand at the bench because it's there if you want it. It's not a disrespectful thing if you don't, and it doesn't make the line for the TV moment, as Paul Maurice wanted to call it, as Rod said he gets enough of. It doesn't make that TV moment taken away from if with the lines being 10 million people long. So I think the bench is fine.
I had someone, I'm going to use this to dovetail to the Dallas Stars. I had someone DM me yesterday saying, what would happen if the Dallas Stars, if Jim Nill went to Eric Tulsky and said, we want our 2 first-round picks back from the Rantanen deal, and we'll give you Jason Robertson?
1 year left on Robertson. Right.
At a very, very nice number. Now he has arbitration rights at the end of it.
Yeah.
Pause on that.
So
Pause on that one because I want to clear a couple of things up here. I want to talk a little bit about Dallas because I put this in the blog. I didn't know it was going to turn into this humongous storm. But let's put up the Dave Pagnotta tweet here before we start to get into it. Because, listen, there are a lot of conversations that are happening in Dallas about what to do and how to change things and how to get there. And right now they have just under $5 million worth of cap space to do it. So this was what Dave, we had on the program yesterday talking about Marner, throwing up on Twitter. Noise out of Dallas about Peter DeBoer. Per multiple sources, players are not pleased with how he handled several situations during the Western Conference Final, along with post-game 5 and exit media remarks. Told players voiced concerns during internal exit interviews. DeBoer has 1 year left on his contract. So I'm not disputing any of that. As a matter of fact, I believe all of that to be true. I think there are major discussions going on at a lot of levels, and I think that the owner is not exactly thrilled at the way that things have played out. Now, Tom Gaglardi is the owner of the Dallas Stars, and Tom Gaglardi first of all, he's a very passionate and generous owner. During this run for the Dallas Stars, where there have been many times where we've said, this team is good enough to win the Stanley Cup. I looked at the Dallas Stars this year, multiple points during the season, and said, this team's going to win the Stanley Cup. This is going to be the Dallas Stars' second Stanley Cup, going back to 1999 when they won it for the first time. This team is just that good. There's no sort of, visible major flaws here, especially after what Jim Nill did at trade deadline. But there is very much a vibe of, okay, have we sort of plateaued here? And given that the owner has done essentially whatever the team has wanted or needed, both with the team, off the ice, all of it, right? This owner has written a lot of checks for this team. And I don't think this owner is thrilled that he's not getting the ROI, the return on investment that he's wanted, and that is the Stanley Cup. So I think right now in the Stars organization, the conversation is revolving around how do we get past this Western Conference Final hump? How do we take this to a level where this is a team that can compete consistently, not unlike Florida, not unlike Edmonton, who are back in the Stanley Cup Final, consistently get to the Stanley Cup Final year in and year out with a roster that should be able to fight for the Stanley Cup and qualify for the Stanley Cup. This was the year, there have been a number of years where, and I really do respect Jim Nill for this, where he's recognized that they're not ready yet. You may look at it and say, there's a lot of stretches where the Dallas Stars will string together a lot of wins, and you'll say, all right, this team is ready, and Nill has read it perfectly. Not yet, not yet, not yet. But they're at a place right now where you're starting to see the veterans age out, Ben, Seguin, most obviously, and some of the kids aren't quite ready yet to step into spots. They're in a really interesting situation right now in Dallas. Nill reads and recognizes that and says, all right, this is the year to do it. When we first started doing this show, the Dallas Stars were very much, and they ended up getting Mikko Rantanen, which was the biggest fish at catching the biggest fish at trade deadline. They were in go for it, big game hunting mode. There was a lot of talk about them maybe going to the grocery store and only having to go down one aisle, and that aisle was called the Calgary Flames. And we wondered about Nazem Kadri, and we wondered about Rasmus Andersson. But the problem with that was Calgary had a competitive year, and none of those guys were going anywhere. Conroy wasn't going to let any of those guys. So Jim Nill looked elsewhere, and it was the deal with the San Jose Sharks and Cody Ceci and Mikael Granlund. Granlund was awesome. Granlund was fantastic from the remainder of the regular season and in through the playoffs. And then the big one. And it, trust me, moving Logan Stankoven was a major deal for that organization. There were many people that know the organization well that said Logan Stankoven will never be traded. That is how well thought of Logan Stankoven is, and was rather, in the Dallas Stars organization. When someone calls you up and says, do you want a top 10 player in the NHL and Mikko Rantanen?
Yeah.
And it's going to cost you some draft capital, and I'm sorry, but Logan Stankoven, it's real tough to make the case where you say no because we can't trade Logan Stankoven.
Especially where they were in their window or are in their window.
Exactly.
Especially.
Exactly. Now, the interesting thing about that is we always consider, and one of the fascinating things about Dallas, and this is where you really have to compliment not just Jim Nill, but Joe McDonnell as well, and Rich Peverly, and the scouting staffs. They've been able to open up a number of different windows. You can make the argument now that by acquiring Mikko Rantanen, they've opened yet another window. Yet they find themselves now in a situation where now Jamie Benn, his contract expires at the end of the season. There's a number of players. And Granlund still has an expiring contract. Matt Duchene is on an expiring contract as well. Pork, but he's an RFA, and Dodonov, who Peter DeBoer really relied on in the playoffs and seems to really like. They have just under $5 million of cap space, and they want to change this team. Not profoundly. Right, it's still going to be a competitive team. No one's talking about taking a step back, but how do you get over the hump? And the one thing that a lot of people, people that I talk to, keep coming back to is, could Jason Robertson and his $7.75 million contract, which is a very, very nice number, considering the production you get out of Jason Robertson. Is this maybe, I don't want to say the only move, but is it probably the most obvious move that the Dallas Stars could make in order to get a return that can help them get over the hump? Now, do they allocate resources? And one of the things I mentioned in the blog was, do they go after someone like Aaron Ekblad? And all of a sudden, one thing we should consider too, Thomas Harley is due a major raise at the end of next season as well. That is going to be a whopper of a contract. But do you look at bringing in someone like Aaron Ekblad, signing him on July 1st, and turning yourselves into one of the best defensive units in the NHL, period? One of the things that a lot of people are wondering about is, in order to make any of these moves, one, you want to first of all find someone that's going to send you things back that doesn't chew up any cap space. So my thought on a lot of this is, do they use Jason Robertson to A, create cap space, and B, reacquire draft capital? And that's why I positioned that from that DM that I got. If Jim Nill called Eric Tulsky and said, I want our 2 first-round picks back and I'll give you Jason Robertson, would you do it? So that seems to be like the one area, like the more conversations that I have, a lot of them about the Dallas Stars, a lot of them revolve around, it looks like this could be the move that Dallas makes in order to be able to have the flexibility to change this team enough that they can get over the Western Conference final hump. There is still a question about Peter DeBoer as well. Now, one thing I will say, and like last night, like Pagnotta put out that tweet last night, and then Kevin Weeks put out the eyeballs, the American Airlines Center as well. I was like, oh, geez, here we go. And it's sort of really yesterday was like the Dallas Stars ablaze kind of day. The thing about the goalie pull. Now, I had a conversation before our show yesterday with one goalie coach from another team who said, I think everyone's reading this goalie pull thing wrong. And I said, well, I've never seen a goalie pull and a timeout at the same time. And this person said, yeah, that's unique and that's awkward. And I said, like, the way that he did it was like, it came off as really callous. Like, Ottinger skating back to the net, and he gets the get back here. And this goalie coach said to me, it sounds like what happened here is Casey DeSmith. Normally when a goalie gets the idea that he's getting the hook, the other goalie's already jumped on the ice. Casey DeSmith hadn't jumped on the ice. He said he was the lead. They had to go back and get something or put something on. There was, because if you look at during that timeout, DeSmith isn't jumping on the ice.
Yeah.
He said if DeSmith had already jumped on the ice, that would have solved all of it. So it wasn't just that spontaneous as he's skating back. Then DeBoer made the decision. The problem was, according to one goalie coach, he believed that DeSmith hadn't gotten over the boards quick enough. And that's why Jake Ottinger thought, oh, well, I'm going back in. Now, the mitigating factor to all of this is, too, and I'm still surprised at this as well, I thought he was going back in the second. I think a lot of us did, too. And this one goalie coach that I talked to said, yeah, I thought he was going back to this in the second period, too. That was. He said it didn't surprise me that he got the hook because he needed the jolt, but the bigger surprise was him still being on the bench in the second and the third. That was the big shock. So that's what I wanted to mention about the Dallas Stars today.
Okay, I'm gonna push back on this.
Sure.
I understand what you're saying about the DeSmith thing, and I'm on the exact same page as you. That A, I thought he was going back in the second. B, the pull was like fine, whatever. I get what he was doing there. My counterpoint to this is, you just called a timeout. The guy was beside you. You could have told him or said to them, DeSmith is going in. Like, Otter, you're done.
First of all,
you're in. Whatever.
The point that this person I was talking to is, you don't have to say it to the goalie. The goalie sees the backup jumping over the boards, and you're Peter DeBoer at that time. You don't want to waste time. Again, I'm guessing. You don't want to waste time by having a conversation with the goaltender, as opposed to, I need to address my players here because we're down 2 Cobb after 2 shots, and I can't worry about the goalie. I've already made that decision. He's got to see DeSmith coming off the bench. And so he's got to know to leave. The problem is, according to this one person, is DeSmith either had to get something, was late getting over the boards, and that's why it came off a lot harsher than it was intended. I know everyone wants to pile on Peter DeBoer right now, and I get it. I understand it. But this one goalie coach said, this might be one mitigating factor here. And we won't know unless Casey DeSmith or Peter DeBoer comments on it.
Yeah, no, I don't know. But look, I'm not trying to do this to pile on Pete DeBoer. I do like him as a coach, but I just, again, I think that it's like, it takes 2 seconds. He could have like ripped the players. And also, let's go in hypothetical here, Jeff. Imagine you're in that timeout, which also we've all acknowledged was a unique situation to call a timeout and pull the goalie. So Ottinger's also not going in there to thinking that's going to be coming. And he says at the end of it, all the players are there. They're all listening. They're all like, holy shit, what's going on? And then all of a sudden he goes, Otter, you're done. And you're like, oh. You know? Again, it's a hypothetical. Maybe that's just how my mind works and not anybody else's. But you throw that one in there and all the players are sitting around going, whoa, what? He's coming out? And then that sends an extra message. I don't know. Maybe a missed opportunity.
John Bankart, if they want to shock the team, show them Jeff's legs. I'm wearing pants today, by the way. You shamed me into putting pants on the show. My bad for throwing the chucks up on the table yesterday. Anyway, I just wanted to listen. There are a lot of things that are on the table in Dallas right now, and you have an owner that's very not pleased with how things have turned out. So we'll see what happens. I don't think any final decisions have been made yet.
Do you think he's asked the league?
Check's email for press release from the Dallas Stars. No, nothing yet.
Yeah, exactly. No, I was gonna say, you think he's asked the league how many cups they hand out each year?
Yeah, it's Berkey. I called the league again, Jeffy. They told me only handed out 1 cup. How many pucks they playing with, Berkey? I checked again. Only playing with 1 puck. Again this year? Yeah, just 1 puck. Yeah. Someone mentioned that a while ago. I was going to bring it up to you here on the program as just sort of lobbing it out there as like goofy ideas. It'll never happen. But how do you like the idea of like if it gets to like goofy overtimes, you throw out an extra puck? Like we're in like the 6th overtime, you throw out a 2nd puck.
No. There's no stuff like that is way too far, Jeff. Like, come on. There's 2 pucks. You know, it's like when you do the shootout in men's league, or when you're
at the
like
same
really
time,
little and they get the same time.
Yeah, because you got ice is expensive. The other team's coming on. Yeah, you got to watch at the same time. Yeah, those are good. That's always fun.
That's a hard no. It's a hard no. I'm not open to that one at all. There's a lot of ideas you probably could have thrown out. That one, hard no.
Okay, hard no for you on that one. All right, let's get to what we're going to do here with no games tonight, because I got a couple of points to make, and I think you do as well. The sheet is powered, as you know by now, by FanDuel. Man, I really hope FanDuel was fine with our conversation yesterday. The sheet is powered by FanDuel, home of the same game parlay. Make every moment more on FanDuel. People sent me pictures of scissors yesterday. FanDuel, proud to connect fans to the major sports moments that matter to them. And you and I had an interesting text exchange about handing off the cup. If the Oilers win, who does Connor McDavid pass it to? And if you're Sasha Barkov, Who do you hand it to on the Florida Panthers? Now, I think FanDuel has a line on this. I want to get there in a couple of seconds. So my thought on this one, for me, it's kind of obvious for Edmonton, I think, and that's Corey Perry, which would be his second Stanley Cup, 40 years old. Now, I have an even bigger hockey fantasy for this one.
Okay.
Here's my hockey fantasy. And I know that Corey Perry still does want to keep playing. He's mentioned that a number of different times. But he's not doing it for the money. I always wonder if, like, the minute he wins another Stanley Cup, he retires. And anyone that's listened to any of my nonsense for however many years has probably heard me talk about this before. And I'm waiting for someone in hockey to finally do it. Corey Perry wins the Stanley Cup, does a lap, skates to center ice, puts the cup on the ice, takes his skates off, leaves them at center ice, and walks off. You
said this some before.
Don't like art. That's your problem, young man. Because that is the way you end a career. You leave your skates at center ice right beside the Stanley Cup. Tell me that's not a glorious picture.
Yes, it is. But here's the problem with this. And this is
no
where
problem.
I think this will... No, there's a problem. This is where this does not work, especially given who Corey Perry is. Yeah. If this goes in the order you want it to, or expect it to, maybe his better way, and he gets it first.
Yeah, I know. A bunch of other guys I know getting the cup too. I know.
Yeah. Then and he is effectively stealing the moment, taking the moment, absorbing the oxygen of the moment. And that, I don't think, is the kind of guy that he is from his teammates. And he would not do that. He would have to, in that situation, take it last. Very, very last. That would be kind of funny. He waits off to the side, and everyone's like, oh, Perry's getting it next. Nope. You name the
How about Perry gets it? How
out.
about Perry gets it twice then? Or he waits until the end and everyone skates off, and then he just takes the skate out. Yeah. I get it again. It's like a snake draft. You get 2 picks.
How about he goes to the Zamboni door, takes his skates off, leaves them, or at the bench, and then just walks off carrying the cup. And that's it. And he goes into the darkness of the tunnel.
To all the Corey Perry. And
he's holding the cup.
Kaiser Sose. For Florida... I originally thought Brad Marchand. It would have been his second cup, 37 years old. And then I thought Seth Jones has been around the NHL for a long time. And Seth Jones was also in Alexander Barkov's draft class in 2013. Barkov was taken second, and Jones was taken fourth. There was a lot of talk about Seth Jones going first that year to Colorado. So I'm gonna go team Seth Jones as opposed to team Brad Marchand on that one. What about you?
Okay. Well, I know what these are, so I'm not gonna say it because I've looked at the list and what they have. Okay. So I do want to ask you this quickly though.
Okay.
Give me your 3. So if it's not Perry, it's who? And if it's not that guy, it's who? Give me those 3 for Edmonton. So you have Perry, 1 is you think it would be, but if it's not Perry, who would be the guy to get it first?
Then I would probably go. You know what? It'd be a nice touch. Stuart Skinner.
Okay.
Then I go Skinner. And if it's not Skinner, I'll probably go Matthias Ekholm.
Okay. I looked. So this is why I made you do that.
Okay.
Not one of those guys is on the list of the top.
Oh, you know what? Nuge. Yeah. What am I thinking of? Yeah, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. Corey Perry, and if not him, then RNH. And then after that,
Nugent-Hopkins.
Yeah.
Number 1
that's
for
the
Edmonton.
Right call. That's the right call.
Yeah.
That's the right call.
Okay. So that's
Zach Hyman.
I mean,
hang on. Zach's gonna come out in a suit and a sling.
Yeah. I laughed at this on too. I was like, okay.
I don't know about Hyman.
I get the point, but like,
yeah, I don't know about that part.
I don't know. But that's why I made you do that. I agree. I understand why you just named everybody you did. I just thought it was interesting. I pulled these.
Corey Perry, not there, eh?
Okay.
40 years old.
Well, he's there, but he's third on the list, plus 3,200 there. Okay, so
Perry
Florida, let's do the same thing.
Okay.
The 3. So you have Jones as 1.
I have
if
Jones.
It's not Jones. It's
I have Brad Marchand, And if not Brad Marchand, I would. Oh man, last year was so much fun too. I would go with probably Aaron Ekblad.
Okay. Nate Schmidt, number 1. Seth Jones, 2. Ekblad, 3. Marchand, 4. Bob, 5. There's more listed on FanDuel if people want to check them out, but that was the way that they're listed there. So Nate Schmidt, obviously, not with the group. I guess this is just because of games played and not having won, and then Seth Jones there. Seth Jones is my pick for Florida. I think it would be Seth Jones, but that's how they have it listed on FanDuel right now. I just thought it was interesting that they had that listed and it was up there. And I thought we should do something with like actual FanDuel stuff after we talked about vasectomies yesterday.
So have an oncology. How many? 3 out of 4 oncologists think that Seth Jones will get the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, I was like, let's do something like real.
I would actually talk about hockey on the Goofy Show here. All right, so tomorrow when we rejoin everybody here, we're going to be talking actually about a game on the horizon. So Greg Wyshynski is going to be aboard tomorrow from ESPN. Thursday, we're going to be in Buffalo for the Combine, so the show will be coming to you from Buffalo Thursday and Friday. That is the plan. That is the deal. Zach and I are on the road. You're coming, right?
Yep, I will be there.
Okay, good. Someone's got to pay for all this. Okay, that's good. Now, I'll tell you what. Everybody in this company thinks you're a cheap prick. Now, you take me out to dinner on Thursday and prove that they're all wrong. That bill comes. I don't want you to tie your skates. That bill comes. You just grab that thing fast.
I'll be in the washroom.
I'll be right back. I got to make a quick phone call and you dash away. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks to Ed Jovanovski for stopping by.
Quickly.
Yes. Oh. Yes.
Ninja inbox. I want people to email us and just a reminder to people about the contest.
You're a good producer. You are. Okay. So the sheet at thenationnetwork.com. Questions, comments, takes, all of it. Doesn't matter. Send them in. All right. Fill up the inbox. The sheet at thenationnetwork.com, and the Ninja Crispy contest is coming to an end. So the second this ends on the 6th, you can go to the Ninja Crispy. Go to the website, and the link is in the description. We've been talking about all playoffs here at the Ninja Crispy on the sheet. You can win your very own Ninja Crispy 4-in-1 portable glass air fryer. That thing that looks so good that we all wish we could be taken on the road to Buffalo. So you wouldn't have to go out and buy me dinner on Thursday and Friday.
Yeah.
All you have to do is head to our Instagram page to find our contest sign up. Follow at Ninja Crispy Canada and reply with what kind of dish you'd like to cook in your Ninja Crispy. Contest available to Canadian residents only, and this will end on June the 6th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern. What would you like in the Ninja Crispy? It is that simple. And there's our Instagram page, as lovingly curated by Zach Phillips. Thanks for joining us today. We are back tomorrow. Thanks to everybody in the chat. Thanks for everyone watching on YouTube and listening on your favorite podcast platform. Game 1 tomorrow, and not a moment too soon. Oilers facing off against the Florida Panthers in Edmonton. We'll talk about it with Wish tomorrow from ESPN. In the meantime, enjoy your evening. We'll join you again tomorrow at 3 Eastern. Have a great night. If you enjoyed that video, and we certainly hope that you do, please hit the subscribe button right there here at Daily Faceoff. I will put this lineup up against any hockey lineup anywhere. It all gets underway at 9 o'clock Eastern with Morning Cup of Hockey. That is Johnny Lazarus. That is Colby Cohen. Then at noon, it's DFO Live. And then 3 o'clock Eastern, The Sheet. Get caught up on everything in hockey.